Welcome to A1R Psychic Radio here on Moonstruck TV with Amanda Hall Psychic all the way from the Gold Coast here in Australia. What an interesting week we've had over the last 7 days around the world. I mean, there's, a lot of talk about vaccines and people sort of starting to take, I suppose, COVID a little bit more seriously in some ways, even though the actual virus itself seems to be ramping up and mutating into many different strains now. And I think we can all say that we're fatigued from this, but at the same time, there's a hint of optimism in the air as, countries are starting to roll out vaccines and people are starting to sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel, that maybe, just maybe, in a short space of time, we can get back to some sort of new normality where we can go about our lives in a more free way, where we don't have to constantly sort of think. If that was only true, that'd be marvellous. I think, yes, it will give us a lot more freedom than what we've had, but I still feel that for quite some time yet, we're going to have to sort of follow good hygiene practices, which to me should always be there, of washing your hands, but more importantly of the social distancing and being aware of where we're going and do we need to go there. And in some sort of ways, the spin-off from COVID-19 has been the planet's had a little bit of a chance to heal, which is not a bad thing. But, if we're all driving less and sort of being more conscious about hopping in our cars and going somewhere just for the sake of doing it, instead of sort of setting a list of what we need to do it and do it in all in one go. We used to hop in the car willy-nilly and off we'd go. So those sort of things are the positives that have come out of this. And the other positives is I think that families now are starting to get a more of a work-life balance, and people are starting to put their lives into perspective and starting to value the important relationships in their lives. So from that standpoint, it can't be a bad thing. So let's move on to the card of the week. And this is from the Simply Tarot deck that was released worldwide in 2005. So, our baby's getting quite old now, 16 years this year. It's the Four of Cups. Now, it's the card of money fluctuations. Now, I hear a lot of people say money fluctuations. Amanda, what does that mean? Well, it'd be lovely if we all had enough money to be able to do every single thing that we wanted to do and we didn't have to do a little bit of creative accounting or adjusting of our expectations. So that's what I mean by money fluctuations. Yes, you might have, a reasonable amount of money coming in, but a reasonable amount is going out, or more is going out than what's coming in. So it's this fluctuating situation. It's going up, it's going down. And being offered something that you may not want is the secondary meaning of this. So it's either one or the other. It's usually not the two together. We don't often have, we could have money fluctuations, but quite often this card is the secondary meaning of being offered something that you may or may not want. And that's why you're sitting there with your arms folded, you've got 4 cups in front of you, and you're sort of saying, well, yeah, that's very nice and I'm very flattered, but I don't know that suits me at this point in time, or it's exactly what I want. So if you're being offered something in the next week, whether it's a new job or whether it's a new situation or an opportunity, make sure that it truly fits with what you want. You don't always have to say yes to something just because it's been offered. And I think that's the important thing that we all need to learn. So I want to move on to the astrology section now. And it's a big week again. It seems to have been a big week for a very long time now astrologically. But the first thing that I want to touch on this week is Mercury. Mercury is the planet of communication. Now, we all know about darling little Mercury, but Mercury can also be the planet of the trickster. If we think of the people that trick us or deceive us in our lives, it's usually come from some form of communication, offer or opportunity. So when we think of Mercury, don't always think about it as being the planet of communication, then I need to make sure that I'm communicating clearly and everybody fully understands what I'm saying. Yes, that's a major role of Mercury. But the other major role is make sure we're not being deceived. Make sure that somebody's not trying to pull the wool over our eyes or tricking us in some way. Now, Mercury currently is sitting in Aquarius. So Mercury in Aquarius to me is about light bulb moments. It's about opportunities for creative thinking, things coming out of nowhere, being able to find a different and creative solution to an issue or a problem that maybe have been plaguing us. For some people, they find that their mind just does not shut down while Mercury's in Aquarius. It's like, you're constantly thinking and thinking and thinking, or ideas are popping in and out of your head, and you're really finding it difficult to sleep or get to sleep or stay asleep or even sometimes focus on the job at hand because your mind wants to race on to the next opportunity or the next job or the next thing that's got to get done, or creating a list in your mind. So in some ways, Mercury in Aquarius can be a very tiring time because our mind just does never rest. It doesn't allow our physical body to sort of catch up and catch its breath. For many of us, it's a time where we get great inspiration, we get great ideas, we get different ways of problem solving, we look at things through a different set of lenses. But at the moment, we have to be very aware because Mercury, the planet of communication, is going retrograde or backwards in the universe at the moment, and it will be that way until the 20th of this month. It started at the end of January, so it's a time where we need to be very, very super careful of our communications. Make sure that people fully understand what is being said. By the same token, we need to make sure that we're fully listening. We're not just picking bits and pieces out of a conversation and that'll do. We have to really put our listening ears on and make sure that we fully comprehend and understand the messages or the information that's being shared with us. Because this is one of those times, because we are so preoccupied with our own thoughts and our own lists and where our own head's going, that we're not paying full attention to some of the important pieces of information that are being shared with us. Now, that can be something as simple as not listening to your partner, your husband or your wife or your children or the members of your household, to your job situation, to sort of out and about, not even following traffic directions, things like that, because you're preoccupied, all the way across to sort of our politicians and the people that run the countries and the nations that we live in, with the messages and information that they're sharing with us. And look, I know most of you are rolling your eyes now and saying, oh, do we have to talk about politics? Well, yes, we have to, because this is the time when you've really got to double down and make sure you're listening to what they've got to say, because this is the time they can sneak things through, because we've got our eye off the ball, and they give us information. They say, oh, well, we did tell you back in February, and you think, no, I never heard that. So you have to really make sure that you've got your listening ears on at the moment. It's not the time to bring up a tricky subject with a loved one or to ask the boss for a raise. It's the time when people won't have their listening ears on, as we've already mentioned, and they're only half listening to your proposal or what you've got to say. So it's not the time to bring up those big, deep and meaningful or important conversations. Leave that till after the 20th if you can. If you have to sign anything at the moment, a contract or a legal agreement, make sure that you really thoroughly read it. For me personally, I always read something out aloud. I find that way then you pick up any mistakes that might be there, and including facts and figures. You know, if you're signing a housing agreement or a loan agreement, make sure that you read the numbers out aloud yourself and make sure there's not a few extra zeros there, that once you've signed it, you're legally bound to that contract. So please be careful. This is the time, if we're going to have problems with communication, and that includes our cell phones and all our devices and our laptops and computers and telephones and all those sort of things, that they will either break down, play up, the batteries die quickly for whatever reason. And again, it's that communication thing. In the olden days when we had snail mail, it was the time when we used to say, don't send something that's important. You know, if you're going to send a contract, maybe send it by courier instead of the post to make sure that it'll get there. This day and age, we send a lot of stuff electronically, so make sure that when you're doing something of electronic nature, particularly if it's transferring money, that you've got the right details. You've got the right account details, and ask for a receipt. And, you know, make sure that you get that receipt so that you've got a paper trail if you need to go back and correct something or change something or chase something up. So anything that's connected to communication at the moment, make sure that you've really got your listening ears on, pay full attention to it, and also be aware that people can be a little bit agitated under a Mercury retrograde. That's heightened with it being in Aquarius, because the Aquarian energy tends to be more about thought and intellect, and sometimes this can make people a little bit snappy, snarly, because they're so preoccupied on what they're trying to focus on, and you're interrupting them trying to tell them something or share some knowledge with them, and it's like you're in their road, you're a nuisance. So just be aware of that, make a few allowances for that. It is going to be a very intense week as far as everything connected with Aquarius. We've got 3 other actually 4 other planets sitting in Aquarius. So we've got a lot of emphasis at the moment on Aquarius. If you look at the zodiac, we've got half the 10 planets and luminaries sitting in Aquarius. So the energy is really Aquarian driven. And the Aquarian energy is about wanting to be different, is about intellect. It's not necessarily about feeling. It's about, if you equate it to where most people think of feelings and we think of the feeling in the pit of our stomach, we either feel comfortable or uncomfortable. We'll transfer that to the mind. Aquarians feel with their mind. It's I know or I don't know. So there'll be a lot of people now that'll have lots of opinions that think that they're very right and their opinion is the only one that counts and it's their way or no way. So make allowances for that as well. So the planets that we have currently sitting in Aquarius, all holding hands together, are Venus, Saturn, Jupiter, the Sun, and also Mercury. So we'll start with Venus. Venus in Aquarius is the ability to sort of think outside the square as far as love relationships or the things that are important to us. Sometimes this is when we get some light bulb moments that we get our new passion in life, the new direction that we're going to follow, because Venus is in Aquarius. For those of you that have Venus in Aquarius in your chart, lucky you, because it means that you will always be attracted to somebody that's very different in life, and you need to have an interesting, stimulating sort of partner. You fall in love with their mind before you fall in love with them physically. So just remember that. So we've got Venus conjunct or holding hands with Saturn. So Saturn's the planet of discipline. It's like the father figure in the chart. So it's sort of saying, even if we do attract new love this month, make sure that we're disciplined enough that we can make this a sustainable relationship, or make sure that we're really looking at the situation. We're not just in love with love itself, that we look at the practical sides of a relationship as well. This is really great for anybody that's starting anything new, or people that are starting new study or new learning programs with, you know, being attracted to it by Venus because of your love of it. Saturn will certainly come in here and give you the discipline to be able to structure it, to be able to learn as much as you possibly can and to gain as much as you can out of these new opportunities. So Saturn is also conjunct or holding hands planet Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion and opportunity. So we've got the things that we love to do. We've got the discipline to be able to make it happen. Now we're talking about Jupiter that can expand the opportunities right out, that can give us that little bit of a push in the right direction, create that little bit of a lucky opening or that lucky opportunity to say to us, this is the direction that we need to go. Now, Jupiter is also holding hands with the Sun, which is where our drive comes from. This is where we get our zodiac signs from. So at the moment, the Sun is sitting in Aquarius. So we really have that opportunity to shine for each and every one of us, that we can bring things to the forefront. We can sort of dazzle people with our knowledge and our ability to be disciplined and driven, and do it in a practical, logical sort of way. As long as we make sure that if we've got something important to say, and this is where Mercury comes in, that we've really primed the stage well enough that the other person or persons are really ready to listen to the pitch that you're going to give them, the sales pitch you're going to give them, or the presentation, or just you having a conversation with them. So it's a very powerful sort of week. It's not for the faint-hearted. For many of you now, you think, gee, I think I'll stay home for the week and just watch the telly. Well, that's probably not a bad idea either. And don't underestimate that too, that if you have that real urge to sit down and binge watch something, or watch something that's of no great substance on the telly or on your device, that there may just be a hidden message in there from Mercury. So sometimes we get answers to the things that are troubling us in the most peculiar or unexpected places. So just be aware of that as well. Information and answers can come from many different sources. They don't always have to come from a conversation or us seeking the answer. Sometimes they're just given to us in forms like that, or seeing a street sign, or getting a message out of a song. So just be open to things that could come your way this week. Now, of course, we've still got Pluto sitting in Capricorn trying to transform the world at the moment. And I pity Pluto. He's been there such a long time now, and he's got such a major job to do in the next 12 to 18 months to try and get us all sort of shaken up and sorted out, and get governments and people and everybody trying to align and sort of have the same sort of or similar sort of message, and taking their countries and nations forward in the most positive, productive way, and the most fair and equitable sort of way. So good luck to Pluto. Finally, I want to wrap it up with one of the moon's nodes. Now, the moon's nodes either show us the easiest way out of something or what we're striving to. Now, I'd like to look at the North Node at what we're striving to, because the North Node at the moment is sitting in Gemini. Now, what that means to me collectively for all of us is we're trying to find a way of being versatile, of being flexible, but also looking for new and innovative ways to communicate or to receive messages. So we're looking at for new information, we're looking for new knowledge, we're looking to keep it sort of not just in our local environment, but listening to many different sources of communication. So if you're a sort of person, and we all have one way or the other that we might vote politically, maybe have a look at the other side, look at someone else's opinion. Let's try and be versatile enough to say, okay, I'm going to approach this with an open mind. I'm going to look at it from all sides. And then from that, I will draw my own conclusion. Don't go into it blinkered and one-eyed and say it's always this way and there's no other way because that's the way I've always believed. Let's be just open-minded at the moment. You may be pleasantly surprised that you see some merit in looking at things through a different lens. Now, I think that's really important, and particularly with Mercury in Aquarius going retrograde, they're both in air signs, so they're asking us to shake things up a little bit. Let's use our mind more so than our feelings. Let our mind be our feelings for a change. Instead of our feelings being driven by our tummies and our gut reactions, let's go with the mind. I know this is right. It is right because it tells me, my mind tells me it's right. So let's try and all practice that this week and see where it takes us. You might just be pleasantly surprised that you're going to get some answers that you never thought were possible, or maybe it'll shake your thinking up that it gives you a different perspective. Anyway, we're going to now talk with Teresa in Fresno in California. Are you there, Teresa?
Hello, I am, Amanda. Nice to meet you.
Do you have a question I can work with, please, Teresa?
Sure. What is the best approach to a current divorce I'm going to be going through?
Oh, okay. That's a tricky one. It's always a difficult time, isn't it, when you've got massive changes in your life like you're experiencing at the moment, to know what's the right step to take next. Look, Teresa, what they're sharing with me is that I just want you to remain open-minded. Now, I'm not saying that you haven't been. I'm just saying if we don't have any preconceived idea of what the outcome will be and we deal with it hour by hour, then I feel that you won't look back and say, gee, I wish I'd done this or I wish I'd done that. Why was I so fixed on only it being this way? You'll then get a much better result. And I think you'll also sort of find that there's a few things that you normally would have overlooked by being so one-eyed about things or so driven about, getting an outcome over here that you miss this bit here. But overall, I do feel that your life is moving forward, and I think it's something that is necessary. Sometimes we sort of look at changes like this in our lives as a form of failure. I don't think it's a sense of failure. I think it's a sense of success, in a sense that you've realised that this is not the direction your life needs to take and it's not fulfilling you as a person. So therefore we look at it, we put it in context and say, thank you very much for the experience. I've learnt my lessons, but I'm now ready to sort of spread my wings and go forward. So would this all be wrapping up as early as next month?
It'll be starting.
Okay, because they were sharing with me March being a really important point in this, and that's why I wondered whether or not it was wrapping up then. I don't think this is going to drag out that long. I think you're both going to approach this in a very mature sort of way. You both want to sort of just move on with your lives with the minimum of fuss, if at all possible. So I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised in the negotiations that will come about. And that's why I think you need to take it hour by hour so that you can sort of readjust or redefine what's important to you as something else is presented to you. But overall, I don't see it as being as stressful as some of the other situations I've seen in your life. So I think you've pretty much got this covered. And then I think you'll move forward in a very positive, dynamic way. So watch out, world. Here comes Teresa.
Thank you. Oh, that's wonderful news.
You're very, very
Wonderful.
welcome.
Do I need a lawyer?
Well, I think it's always wise to get a lawyer so that we
Right.
make sure that we've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. But look, overall, I think it's going to be I'm not going to say painless, but I'm going to say a lot easier than you could have imagined it could have been, because you are going to be so alert and so aware and prepared to negotiate. You know, you can have this as long as I can have that. You know what I mean? It's sort of like you're trying to be very fair about the situation, and I think he will reciprocate. So that's a good thing, because he didn't do a lot of being fair in the marriage. So Tommy learned that lesson. Yes. Anyway, I wish you well, Teresa. We're going to be talking with Lauren now in Lewiston in Minnesota. Are you there, Lauren?
Yes.
Hello, Lauren. Do you have a question I can work with, sweetie?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you have a little question I can work with for you today, sweetie?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of questions. But, I guess we could start with my relationship.
Okay.
Like, just where it's going, you know, and...
Okay. Well, the first thing that they were showing me while you were thinking about your question, Lauren, was they were showing me that there's a lot of change coming up in your life. So have you been feeling this? And I'm not just talking about the relationship at the moment. Let's sidestep that for the moment. But in the last 5 or 6 months, have you felt like things are sort of starting to ramp up in your life, where you're starting to feel that, you know, I've got to make some changes. I've got to look at things differently. I've got to put my feet in different holes, different shoes, different directions this year? Has that been sort of slowly starting to ramp up in your world?
Oh, yeah.
Good. Well, that's good. I want you to keep going. Now, I know you asked the question about the relationship, and every time I ask that for you on your behalf to your soul, it just shows me 2 big question marks. So I'm going to take from that, this is not really the time for us to make any final sort of decisions on whether this is a keeper or whether it's time to sort of shut the door and move on. I still feel that there's a couple of major pieces to this puzzle that are yet to be presented. So it's one of these rare times that I'm going to ask you, Lauren, to just be and do nothing, you know, like just sit there and look at it as if you're an observer in your own relationship, you know, like you're a spectator in the crowd. You're sitting there watching the ball game and, you know, you're just sitting there. You're not the one actually out on the field participating in it. If you can do that, then I think you will gain the wisdom of what is needed to know whether or not this is a keeper or not. You've been questioning whether or not this is the right relationship for you. It's not that I dislike him. I think he's quite a nice man. It's just that there's a number of things there that you've questioned. And I think part of this questioning is coming from you, and it's coming from within. It's sort of like, because you're looking to change so many things in your life, or so many things are up for review at the moment, this is part of what comes into that mix. In some ways, I could say to you, I don't know that this person is strong enough for you, and I think that's part of what you're unsure about. And look, we don't always have to have people that are stronger than us or are strong all the time. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that go into making a good relationship. It's not just one major ingredient. It's a lot of things. And I think for the moment, I wouldn't be suggesting to make a decision one way or another about the relationship, because I think over the next couple of months, you're going to seesaw in and out of many different ways of looking at this. And I wouldn't like you to be hasty and say, oh, well, this is, you know, I don't want this anymore. It's not what I need. And then to turn around in time to come and regret that you made that decision, that you made it in haste and it wasn't the right choice. So I feel he's also growing and changing and going through a few growing pains in what he wants to achieve out of his life at the moment as well. So it's sort of like both of you in this midst of change, and somewhere in the middle of this, we're trying to balance a relationship as well and work out whether or not we take it to the next level, or do we just sort of say this is as far as it's going to go. And at this point, I'm going to say that the answers are not not complete. Sometimes I can see, a lot of times I see things where they give me a definite, this is what's going to happen. And sometimes they give me, it's sort of like, well, the future is not written yet. And that's what they're showing me here with this. It's like, you've got your changes, he's got his changes, and then somehow we come together as a couple and we see how those changes intermingle and intertwine between the two of us to see where the relationship's going to go. There was someone from your past that keeps coming back into your mind. That to me is unfinished business. It doesn't necessarily mean you've got to go back there, but I think you have to go back over the relationship in your mind and understand why it came to an end. It's sort of significant that you never completed that. You never completely let go of it, but it's not something that you need to go back to. So I hope that's helped you, Lauren. I don't mean to sound vague, but I give you what they give me. And they're sort of saying focus on what you need as a person, then the relationship answers will come. So that's where we're going to leave Lauren there in Minnesota. So I hope you found the show informative. We have many shows here on A1R Psychic Radio. This is only the first day of many shows to come. So I'm sure there's answers to be had. Each psychic, each astrologer, each healer has a different view on the world, as that's what makes the world so unique and different, is that we all have a different perspective. So I hope until next week that you sort of work with Mercury, learn to understand what it is that brings out the best part of the Aquarian energy in you, and have a great week, and bye for now.